out because.
Once again, Adam was cut off. Sorry about that.
It happens to the best of us.
You were talking about a cool thing, new acquisition in your life, and that's always cool.
Yeah, I got a new whip.
Right on. I hope to be in that category in the next few months. That's cool. Right on.
Jamie, you've got an echo on your voice.
Air conditioning is nice.
No, I said you have an echo on your voice. I didn't say air conditioning is nice.
I was still continuing my thought with Adam. I'll have to try to do something about that. I have no fucking idea what I'm going to do at this point. But
no,
we can do the great sponsors. See who they are. Get excited about them.
JCC is sponsored by the Botanical Company, Redemption Cannabis, Relal Solutions, Detroit Nutrient Company, GoGreenOnline.com, Custom 420 promos, including Culture Clothing. And who is the additional sponsor, Jamie, that we don't have added to the reel as of yet, that you mention every once in a while?
I don't think that's the case anymore. That's all. They're all in there now. That's not the actual fuck up that we're dealing with.
Really? Okay.
Am I still echoing?
Nope, you're fine.
Nope.
All right.
You're good.
Yes. You have monotoned your lifestyle, sir. Thank you.
Right on. So here we are with Red Setter. Happy Tuesday.
Good, man.
Got a few things I kind of wanted to get to. Let's see. We got somebody with us here. Oh, he's coming right on. Let's just get him up here. Village President of Kalkaska, Harley Wales.
Woohoo!
Hello.
What's up?
Hey, it's nice to have you here, man.
Hey, how we doing, man?
Very good.
Great. Harley was a big part of opening the Kalkushka Lounge and is a personality and a fixture at that location. So, Harley, in addition to your municipal duties, you're kind of famous among us for that reason, too.
Yeah.
Yep. He's a health professional who has switched gears a little bit to come over into the new emerging cannabis industry, into one of the first lounges ever opened. So that's pretty cool. And
I'm very excited.
Yeah, and it was obvious, man. That a couple nights were just awesome there, I have to say.
I had a great time.
And tomorrow it opens to the public. But we don't get into it real heavily right now. I know you're coming on to kind of be part of the conversation a little bit, and we'll switch gears to that, in a few minutes. But it was quite awesome. But your role as village president has also been really crucial overall for how Kalkaska has viewed and decided to work with opportunities via the new cannabis laws and that type of thing. And that's a cool conversation that we'll have in a little bit too.
Awesome.
We've been talking about the and by the way, Harley, be a part of the discussion. If you got some info, or if you're have questions or anything like that, jump right in. And
sure.
Also I forgot what I was going to say. My brain's not working that well.
We're going to start us on our first conversational topic for today.
Here we go. Mark's going to come. So anyway, we were talking about the issues with the fraudulent signatures. Oh, I was going to say is that we've unfortunately had to talk about some bad things at localities and attempts or successes at bad ordinances being passed, and it's refreshing a little bit. We're going to be having a discussion that's exactly opposite of all that, because Kalkaska decided to take advantage of it. But anyway, there are we talked about it, that we thought that the challenges maybe would be really rough for those guys, because one, they are ultimately responsible. I think that's going to be one of the arguments of board of canvassers, that even though you hired these people and you didn't realize they were going to be fraudulent, I guess you didn't do your due diligence to double check things and make sure that you were going to turn in something that made sense. And Rick brought it up that when we did the MI Legalize campaign, we made sure that signatures were verified along the way.
Well,
We paid for it.
Yeah.
But the reality is that these people that are involved have never had to verify signatures in the past. They never were looked at as a concern. We knew that our signatures would be questioned. We knew that everything we did would be questioned. And I'm not sure if this is a case of sabotage or what, but for some reason, they didn't look over what was going on in their own campaigns. And
Adam, I got a challenge for you on what you just said, though. Mark Brewer from the Michigan Democratic Party has been verifying signatures or challenging signatures on elected officials for their petition drives for years and years and years.
Right.
He always does. So to say that they didn't think that theirs was going to be challenged or looked at, I think that's not accurate.
Well, the former police chief of the city of Detroit has never turned in a petition in his life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's on the other side of government, and I believe that he never thought that he would be challenged. And the party and the people around these people told them, "We've got this for you." We go and hire these canvassers who then collect the signatures for you, and these people never thought that A, they might be hiring bad actors, and B, that the guys like Mark Brewer are going to come after them.
Yep.
And the bad actors is the real problem, because it's not just a guy sat down and wrote down a few signatures. This was a concerted effort to create fraud.
The image that they created was these signature gatherers are sitting in a room with the voters roll and doing a round robin with the petition.
Yep.
Right.
You know what?
Go ahead, Rick. Priscilla here is confirming some stuff, by the way.
Yep. The real criminal here is $20 a signature. Okay.
Right.
If you know that your campaign is not going to verify and you're getting $20 a signature, and that by the time anybody discovers what you've done, you'll be collecting SIGs in California, or you'll be in Florida working some ballot initiative and probably never have to face a consequence. And if we're talking about 20,000 fraudulent signatures at $20 each, I mean, that's a top end number, but we're talking in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, folks. And that's a real incentive to cheat. So when you have that kind of money going out, it just makes no fiscal sense whatsoever that you're not going to spend an extra $1 or 75 cents or 50 cents to verify each individual signature. And I know you looked at those, the bulletin that came out from the state, Adam. Some of those are so flagrant.
Oh, it's obvious. It's the layman, and I believe that's why that was put out. I believe the Board of Canvassers said, you know what? We're going to expose this, and we're going to do it in such a way that the layman will be able to look at it and say, the Board of Canvassers did exactly what I want them to do.
I think you're right.
Unfortunately, it hit some big players, and they weren't expecting it. But again, I question the dirty pool of this, because I know people who have participated in fraudulent ballot signature collecting for years because they were hoping to spoil ballots of items they didn't agree with. And they would try to spoil those ballots as opposed to not sign them.
Right. Black ops.
As an activist, I am into ballot initiatives. I will sign any ballot initiative presented to me if you can tell me what it's about, simply because it gives me the opportunity to vote no at the polls if I disagree with it. And I appreciate your hard work. So I sign, that's one of my things, is I sign ballot initiatives. And I can tell you that when we were in Lansing last week, I saw a couple fellas walking down the street, and I opened the window and I asked them what they were collecting signatures for. And the guy couldn't tell me. And he had 3 different ballots in his hand, and he couldn't describe any of them, but he knew exactly how much he was getting paid for each signature.
I had that same situation, Adam, and also the guy was having people from different counties signing on the same page. And I said,
right,
well, it's obviously not my business, but this is a disqualified page now.
So the guy handed me the clipboards. I flipped to a new page. I put Oakland County on there. I signed it, and I said, here, that page is for Oakland County. And his eyes were like saucers. Had no idea that.
Hey, Harley,
Well,
do you have
Yeah.
any aspirations for higher office, like in the state legislature?
I've been asked that a couple of times if I have aspirations for the Senate. And at this point in my life, I don't. But, I still have a long life ahead of me. So I like to keep all my connections and options open.
Right on. Well, we need a collection of better decision makers up there, a better composition of lawmakers that will actually take time to think issues through and not be so transactional. That's what
Well,
it's
and not just
degraded.
think from one side, but think from everybody's standpoint. And I think that's, one of the things that I tried to do here in Kalkaska is look at everybody's viewpoint. And I'd be happy to carry that on up the road.
Right.
I'm gonna say that you can't make a decision or a judgment when it comes to cannabis if you're not a user, because you don't understand it. And that's why we have the messed up laws that we have. The good laws are because people write good laws. The messed up ones in every situation is because the people that wrote those laws don't understand the game, they don't understand the product, and they don't understand how that law is going to affect something. And, we talk about that all the time. I'm a big fan of elected officials who are willing to come out and say, I use or smoke cannabis or whatever, because that lets me know that they get it. They understand it. I would like to ask Harley a question, though, about Kalkaska.
Yeah.
You're the president, correct? Of the
Yes, correct.
Was there any what's the word? I'm sorry.
Opposition.
Sorry, thank you. Was there any opposition from your fellow board members or the political people, not the community, the political people?
Politically, once the aspect of monetarily, was it good for us? Did the vote within the village limits, the vote for recreational marijuana was a positive vote. Anything over 50% is a positive vote, and it was. So once that, it was a long discussion also, because what are you supposed to do as an official? You're supposed to, of course, support the people and not bring your own values to the table. That's not what you're there for. You're to be a voice for your constituents. So they actually were all pretty much on board. A couple were resistant because of their own belief system. But once they realized that their belief system didn't have to do with their duty, that was their belief system, everybody was on board.
Now it's not true though. In the areas around Kalkaska, you have what I believe a township, Kalkaska Township, which is out. Is that or you have some others close by that have said no, kind of roughly said absolutely not. Isn't that true?
Yeah, we are the only ones that are opted in the local area. Yeah,
and that's good.
Traverse City's nearby, but it's all medical still, right?
It is. Yeah.
Does Kalkaska have limits?
There is provisioning limits, and everything else is pretty much a free-for-all, but we have everything back in the industrial park. So if it's located in the industrial park, then it's unlimited licenses back there. And the provisioning centers were the ones that had the most public heavy input on, and that's why those are a limited class within village limits.
And one of our great sponsors, Real Leaf Solutions, has a cultivation operation in one of those areas, and they are also Tom and Krista also a part of, along with Russ and others, part of the lounge in the store there locally in Kalkaska. And didn't Tom Beller also get involved locally politically, like with the Economic Development Board or something similar to that?
Yeah, Tom was recently appointed to the Downtown Development Board.
Yeah.
That's a big thing, especially in a town that's as customer friendly as Kalkaska is.
Yeah, and and to have different people come into different boards from the industry gives us that viewpoint that we've really been lacking all this time. So I came on in early 2018. So it's been a while, but the education we've had to go out and find anytime something has come up on any one of the boards. And I sit on all the boards as president. I sit on the DDA and the Planning Commission as well. So I sit in all these boards, and anytime a question would come up, we would all kind of look, and then we do a Google search. And we really needed those people on the boards to get that education and to make the right decisions. So it's been nice to have Tom come on board. And then we also had a couple of others in the industry come on board. And then a couple of us that are on the board are now going to work for the industry. Right. So I think we're going to get a nice, even, honest approach to legislation here in Kalkaska.
Right.
Did you get any pushback from your local law enforcement, or any? Do you have any communication with them on this?
Local law enforcement, as in the village of Kalkaska, has its own law enforcement. So my own local law enforcement, of course, knows and has been created a lot surrounding the industry coming into town, because before that, the town really couldn't afford a police force at all. So one of the first things I'm sorry, did you say something?
I'm sorry, I was just going to interject and say, and we'll continue on with this conversation, but this is something very specifically that I wanted to talk about. For later. Yeah. I did, but it naturally happened. That was a legitimate question by Adam, and I don't mind delving into it a little bit now.
Is there a reason that we wanted to wait till later? I mean,
well, we're going to have some other people come on and talk about some other aspects of it, but they're not on yet,
So if I wanted to buy a cop for Kalkaska, what's it cost?
I'm sorry, what?
If I wanted to buy a cop for Kalkaska, what's it cost?
Oh, well, when we think about putting a cop on payroll, we figure that we have to have a cop and a vehicle. So we say $100,000, but that's just the first year. And then it's about $60,000 for a cop on payroll. So that's what we've been able to do, is put more cops on payroll. Good. Because those checks coming in from the state of Michigan, we were able to put, dispensaries on the drag, and now we're getting the benefits from it. And the county is also, which has been great.
And it's the revenue from the stores that you're putting toward the police department and helping to support that.
Maybe, it is.
Right? Yeah. And for those viewers that aren't familiar with what just happened in Michigan, Michigan rewards communities that have retail establishments this year to the tune of $54,000 per cannabis retail establishment license for adult use sales. So how many do you have in Kalkaska, Harley, licensed?
So our check was just shy of $400,000.
What?
Yeah. So qualifying time, I think, was September of last year. So every year at September, I try and take a snapshot in my head, and I don't know what the number was, but I know what the number was that I got this spring. So it was pretty amazing.
Well, as much as I hate the police, I think it's kind of cool that the weed's buying cops for communities that don't have it.
And then they're not going to worry about it.
And not the jackbooted cops of the drug war either. No.
I mean, when you come from that origin, though, when you come from that origin, when you know that your position was funded by the cannabis industry, I think you walk into the badge and uniform with a little bit of a different attitude than if you came out of a Detroit narc squad that just happened to retire up north and decided to join the local boys. Right, I think it's a little bit different attitude when you
Harley, go over the interview process, because that was an interesting discussion. I mean, that it comes up as a big part of that consideration. I think.
Well, it does, because you have to know what their outlook is towards cannabis, and you find a lot of the fresh recruits that we have coming in don't have that same stigma in their head, because in the generation where they grew up, there wasn't that stigma, and now it's legal. So now they think it's weird that people think that it's bad. So it's a complete 360 from what you would find now hiring somebody, maybe, as you said, a retired cop coming up to, just, get on Easy Street up here and half retire. That's not what we have coming in. And it's a refreshing crowd. One of the first things we were also able to do, by a donation by somebody in the industry, was get a new canine, because there was a lot of illicit drug traffic coming up through our area, a lot of really harsh drugs through our area, and they were doping the cars so that the dogs wouldn't catch them because they would smell the pot and they would think it was the pot, and it was diverting the dogs off of the harder drugs. So one of the first things we were able to do was get a canine that wasn't trained for marijuana at all. So all she knew was hard drugs.
Nice.
And publicized that very heavily when it happened. So that immediately got the illicit drug trade down, and also made people driving through town know that they're not going to get pulled over by one of our canines because they're smoking pot, because it doesn't even know what pot is.
You know, some towns when considering like granting this license or including it in their opting in package, will have a visit from the sheriff or a chief of police or somebody who claims to be prepared to pull people over as they're leaving these lounges, because they can't believe that there would be a situation where people did any of the police themselves or anybody else have this concern, and how did that discussion go down? And we've been joined by Ryan Basore, of course, from Redemption Foundation and president of GLEN, the Great Lakes Expungement Network, just celebrated 1 year of operation. And also Ryan was involved very early on in how Kalkaska kind of developed and accepted things and stuff like that. So,
welcome, super cool Ryan with the shades. But Harley, I think Jamie originally had a question or two in there for you about
just about how those questions go, and has there been concerns about people driving away from the the lounge, or how those discussions have taken place.
The concerns have been really a bit of you haven't really had any voice to me about people driving off. It would be no different than, there's several places where you can get alcohol in town, and we don't have our cops follow people home from the bars. We expect people to be responsible just like they are everywhere else, and come and have a good time.
And the reality is, I don't want to rub it in. Go ahead, Rick.
I just have to say, I love the fact that in 2022 you can order a police dog that doesn't know about the smell of cannabis.
Isn't that nice?
You kind of have to.
They're training them not to have that trait.
Do you remember when some cops?
It's a liability.
Right.
I know.
Do you remember when some cops were trying to tug on some heartstrings a few years ago, and say stuff like, "Oh, if this passes, we're going to have to put down all of our dogs."
All these dogs.
An argument against legalization, as if we pass Prop 1 in 2018, all of these police dogs that have been trained for cannabis somehow would have to, go away because it would be not useful anymore. As an argument against the vote of the people, how terrible.
In the meantime, every time one of those dogs retires from the job, his handler takes him home. Probably 95% of the time. So, it's nonsense what these people have used to fight against us. And fortunately, we've been able to keep moving the ball forward each time. And, I love to hear that there are communities around Kalkaska, for instance, that are anti-weed and don't allow any dispensaries and don't allow anything. Because to me, Kalkaska can thumb their nose at those places and look what we got, and the sky isn't falling, right? I mean, things are good in Kalkaska. It's
Everything seems great in Kalkaska. Actually, it's all working out just fine.
Has there been
and the areas around us that are seeing, and they're just catching on, and now they're hearing about the revenue and things that are now coming in, and they're all starting to understand why we did what we did. But of course, hindsight's 2020, and it's a bit late for everybody. They've already taken their stance, and now they would have to go to, have it go to the polls for them to be able to opt in. Now they didn't realize what they were doing when they did it.
I'll tell you this: in addition to having a regret, we tried to get people to come to a pro cannabis position from a social justice aspect. We tried to get people to come from a human aspect. We tried to use the children to get people to believe that having cannabis in their community was not a bad thing. And it turns out it's just the money.
It's always been the money.
Surprise.
It's the bucks.
But that's politics. That's how politics works. And, I kid you not, it's interesting to know exactly how much a cop costs for Kalkaska.
Yeah. One dispensary equals one cop. One retailer equals one cop, essentially.
But I bet if you want something done, and I don't care what it is, weed or not, and you show up in Kalkaska and you figure out a way to throw down for that cop, they're going to be a lot happier to see you. Yeah. Tax me, please. Let me help.
But, you know, when we look at Kalkaska and we say, you know, there's a dead zone essentially around you, even though Traverse City is close and there are other places to the east and to the south distance, what we're looking at is a microcosm of what we'd like Michigan to be, a very friendly situation, especially with non-retail situations where, like you mentioned in the industrial park, free for all. You know, however many you can fit in there, and when we're done fitting them in there, let's look at a second property, right?
So yeah, which is exactly what, actually, Jamie, that's exactly what we did, because on our future use map, we expanded what was the industrial park to a much broader uses in that mindset that maybe we will need to do that someday. But it's a question to where it is now. So yeah, we did have that mindset.
Right on.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, so the story goes a little bit, and Ryan can kick in on this too, and you know, Harley hopefully can confirm or straighten me out a little bit. But there were people that did retire up there or come up to the Kalkaska area who have like managerial, you know, executive kind of experience. Who, in one case, a former cop, and who were like looking at ways of trying to help out Kalkaska in a big picture kind of sense. And then meanwhile, these laws pass with the provision of, you know, if you participate, this started off with medical, of course, you know, 2016, with the provision that if you participate, you get a, you know, a cut of the proceeds and that kind of stuff. We did something different with the MRTMA, which is now resulting in these larger things. But point being that you get this unit of share, you know, if you allow these businesses and stuff. And those guys looked at it and said, this is perfect. You know, this is the kind of stuff that we need right now. We're trying to figure out how to help out this town or this village.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what happened.
Ryan, are you trying to say something, man?
I can't hear anything.
I mean, he's so sexy, but we should still hear the voice though. Oh, just 1 minute.
Harley, have you noticed?
And Pinconning did that too, by the way, early on.
They did. Let's let Anton get in. He hasn't had a chance yet.
What do you got, Anton?
I was just going to say, Harley, have you noticed that the open-mindedness that you guys have had, has that been rubbing off on any of these surrounding areas that have kind of been prohibiting the activity? I mean, hopefully that you guys have been the example that is leading to more change in the area, because that's the only way any of this is going to happen.
From what I've heard and from the context that I've been getting from surrounding areas, wanting to pick my brain and get copies of my ordinances and wanting to know exactly what the logistics on what they should and shouldn't do. It appears as though at least 3 or 4 local communities are on their way to opening their minds as well.
Dangle a $400,000 carrot in front of their nose, they're likely to do that.
It's amazing what that does. It's amazing what that does. Even if you dangle, you know, one $25,000 carrot in front of them, it's amazing what it does.
A lot of small towns haven't seen that money. Even the local licensing money has completely changed the bank.
A lot of these areas around here haven't had an actual budget to use ever.
Right on.
Hey, Ryan, that would be different. That would be different to have a budget to use.
Right. I remember talking to a lot of small towns on the eastern side of the state that went in early too, and they were looking at budgets they haven't seen ever since they've been there. Ryan, are you able to?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You hear me? Awesome. Yeah, and I was talking. Said Harley, man, I did barely recognize you. Look great.
I
dude.
know.
Looking good.
The two of you look like brothers, actually. To be honest with you.
Yeah, no, he looks way better than me. So. No, it's great to see you. And I was just saying, it was really cool. But I remember I went up to Kalkaska in the winter of '16, right after MMFLA, and I remember actually talking to Scott, what a guy ahead of his time. What an asset he's been for the village, and then Mayor Jeff was there. And you guys handed it off kind of seamlessly. As rocky as that was, you guys.
I know, didn't we do that nice?
That was amazing, and I thought.
Hard to believe we work so good together now, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it was it's wild, but I always thought of Kalkaska. I helped the Bellers get their first property there. They're the first grower, and my dream was always to see like, hey, here's this town And what a way to show the politicians in the world, like when you really embrace cannabis and go for it, this is what could happen, you know. And I'm not up there really anymore, but I love it. You know, I follow what you guys are doing, Harley, and man, it's awesome. And it's, you know, I actually, the podcast that you came on of mine, I use that for some other municipalities to listen to. Yeah, what you said. Maybe I have to do another one as a recap, but it's been great. So
Awesome.
Smoking rope.
So there was a question that was posed by Chris Silva, a longtime friend of the show, host of Chad Watch. And Chris asked if there was an estimate on, yep, sure does. Is there an estimate on how many jobs this created in the city? And as a side note, how many licensed cannabis businesses do you have in the city? Do you know, my friend?
So last count, the spreadsheet said I had 58 licenses. Those can be housed under some of the same, obviously, because a lot of people stack their grow licenses. But that was the last license count that I can recall, was 58 individual licenses. And then what was the other question as to?
How many employees? How many employment?
I'm saying it's around 400 as an industry.
Okay.
In the county, you know, just within my jurisdiction of the village.
Now, how many residents of the village?
I'm sorry?
How many residents of the village?
Just over 2,000 was the last census count. I think it was 2019 or something like that. Yeah.
So that's a good number for of jobs created for an industry.
It is. So there's the healthcare, which is the hospital. And pre-COVID, they were about between 400 and 500 employees, and I think they're between 200 and 300 now. And I think during that time period, I think that the industry took over as the major employer for the industry.
If we look at a breakdown of what you primarily have as a driver of jobs, Harley, we're looking primarily at cultivation and processing, those type of industries, as the larger piece of real estate. Are those also the generator of the greatest number of jobs in your community, do you think?
As far as real estate versus jobs, it's definitely, from what I can see from the outside looking in, processors definitely generate the most jobs, and then grows. Yeah. And then provisioning on down.
Retailers on down. Do you have any safety compliance facilities, testing labs in your community?
I just did a site plan for one that will be coming online sometime.
Well, seems like a really fortuitous location for someone to be in. If we have all that,
it does, and it's somebody who already is it's a license holder already who has a transportation company in the village, so they kind of already know what they're doing, and so thought that was a gap that they could also help fill within the local jurisdiction, so that we would then have everything available here locally as well. Kind of how everyone who has the business wants to be integrated on all levels. That's kind of how we want it to be as a village, to have all access as well. Right. So the lab will be the last piece that we needed.
Right.
That's awesome.
So who is there in retail? I know that Pincana is there, Riverside,
Botanical,
Green Farm,
which of course is right next to Kalkushka downtown.
It is. Yeah, I'm Botanical.
Green Farm, Loom.
Green Farm, Loom.
Yeah, Loom all the way down the end.
Good. Business still there?
What's that?
There was a micro business that opened up there. Is that still there?
Stony Bear is still there. Yep. Limited hours, I guess, on their sign at Stony Bear. And then at the end of, I actually live right at the end of my road. I'm in my backyard, if you can't tell right now. There's another micro business that's getting staged and ready down there as well.
Cool.
So really
and then Owlswell has a position stationed as well over here, but they have never opened up a store here yet. They have one over in Traverse City.
That's Allswell, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I saw someone give a shout out to Harrisville too. I wanted to give a shout out to the mayor of Harrisville, another cool one.
Oh yeah.
Nice. Mayor Jeff, I had many beers, Busch Lights on his boat a couple nights. So awesome. There's a guy with some vision, working hard for the city and the village of Harrisville too. So I know
still is.
Open there. Yep. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. You described a working hard schedule there, actually.
Hey, Ryan, is that building?
He's impressed with my ability to drink. So.
Ryan, is that building that we worked with in use now as a?
No, Just the one across the street consume. The other one's licensed but not open.
Okay.
Harley, have you noticed, you hear a lot of like these townships that are still kind of entrenched in their prohibitionist views. Have you noticed any barriers or, I don't know, I guess advice that you could lend to some of these municipalities that may kind of soften their views a bit that you may not have anticipated or you did anticipate? I mean, it seems like having the conversation with folks that have gone through the process and are able to show that the boogeyman is not out there to ruin their villages. It seems to have to come from folks in positions such as yours.
You know, I think that a little harder conversation that I had with some folks from another municipality that were considering it and invited me over to talk. There was one persistent person in the room, and she could not let go of her own personal angst about marijuana coming to town. And that is the message that I needed to get across to everybody really at that moment, just because at that moment she made it all about everything moral that she owned. And so I called her on it right then. And I said, okay, well, in my experience, bringing marijuana to town, what that does is it brings very educated people in that have degrees to run these high-end factories and high-end establishments for retail. So what that did was it brought employees in that all have to have those grades in school, then go to college, then now they're moving to your town, ma'am. Or, well, they moved to my town, but they could be moving to your town. But because of your moral judgment, you're not going to let anybody in your town be subjected to college-age people moving here that maybe they would like to marry. This could really change your town, ma'am. And she sat and she stopped, and it actually sunk in that she was denying everybody, her neighbors, her whole town, the possibilities to lift up their town because of what she felt was wrong. And that's not even her place while she's sitting on that board. And at that moment, everybody had that reality. So that's a reality that I think everybody that sits on a board in any municipality needs to know, is that you're not sitting there because we thought you were the best moral judge and that's why we picked you. We thought maybe you were a little bit smarter than us, so we picked you. That's why we picked you. Not so that you could be our moral judge. That's my message for everybody.
I like it. I like it. You know, I'm in a township now. I'm in Macomb Township, and they are very hard to deal with. And what I found is this township has generally been, you know, you have more of the older crowd. I think back in the day, they kind of set up roots here and never left. And now you've had this influx of young families coming from the technology side of the house, and they're coming from all these different industries, and they're settling here. And, you know, when I talk with some of these politicians, the first thing they want to jump to is they want you to feel that they're representing the people. And I try and they're mistaking this, like you said, for their own personal views. And it's, you know, you're not representing the people. You're letting your judgments get in the way of these folks that really do want this. We want these things to be here. We want the tax money, first of all. You know, we can draw people that we wouldn't normally, like you said, scientists. This is science that we're dealing with, and technologies that haven't even been created yet. And we want to bring those things into our community. So kudos to try and moving the ball forward.
We're not exaggerating either. If you've been inside some of these cultivation centers, some of these really big cultivation centers, they look like NASA, to be honest with you.
They really do.
I see people in gowns going into clean rooms in order to perform things, working with high-tech scientific equipment, the same thing that you would find at Harvard or Stanford in a similar type of laboratory. So the fact of the matter is, these really are. The better thing, in my mind, the better argument has always been that we've had two censuses of the people. In 2008, the people voted. And then in 2018, the people voted again. And if the people in your particular town voted yes to both of those proposals, it's impossible for you to make the argument that your folks don't want cannabis to be involved in your community.
Just aside from even the monetary vision that was there, further on in that conversation, again, back to that woman again. I said, in my community now, it's been a couple of years, and I can honestly tell you, we have improved the breeding stock in Kalkaska by bringing cannabis to Kalkaska. And I was that blatant with her. I was. Because we have this now influx of educated people coming to town. It's just the opposite of what everybody thought would happen. The big fear was going to be, oh, the weed's going to bring this. And it's not. I'm sorry. It's just the opposite. We have all these really smart brainiacs coming to town now.
That's an excellent point, and a great example. Again, as Anton was
an interesting way to phrase it.
Yeah.
It was a kind of a harsh way to phrase it, especially at that meeting, which was with, I think, their town council and their DDA. But that was the wording that I used at their meeting. So
Harley,
I thought it would carry it through for you.
Clear perspective.
I appreciate that. And sometimes you have to use very blunt words in order to actually get someone's attention, especially someone who's all in their own feelings at that moment. It's very difficult to communicate.
Was very much there.
Yeah.
It did reach through, let me tell you.
Yep.
Well, I like to point out that as an elected official, you represent your constituents. And when they in a ballot initiative vote over 60%, you can't be against that.
I can't. I can't be against it no matter where I morally stand on anything. I mean, I am clearly pro-weed, but even if I wasn't, I can't say no.
And if a person says, my personal feelings are more important than this obvious expression of the will of the people, then that person really isn't fit for public office. Go ahead, Adam.
Get rid of them.
I was going to say you can and should represent that other 40%, but that other 40% didn't win. This was a ballot initiative. This was something that was changed by the will of the people. And as an elected official, you somewhat have to be beholden to the people. And I can remember when the city of Royal Oak was passing a moratorium back in the medical marijuana days. And I showed up at a commission meeting and I pointed out that, more people voted yes on the ballot initiative than voted for all the commissioners combined. So how can you be against this?
Yep. I remember that the 63% that we won medical marijuana by in 2008 was a greater percentage that we voted in the governor or the attorney general or any of the elected officials. 63% is a landslide in election work.
I mean, I'm sorry. Marijuana made these elected people their bitch, if you ask me. You can't get out from underneath that. There's no way you can say the people, I don't agree with the people. But they do. That's what amazes me. That there are communities that, for God knows what reason, have not allowed it and have banned it. Done what they could to make it very difficult and whatnot. And
some of them continue to do so with these anti-caregiver ordinances that some of these have passed. Harley, have you been pressured by the Michigan Townships Association or the Michigan Municipal League to pass ordinances that might impede on an ability for a caregiver to exist in your community?
No, I have not. I haven't heard of anything coming up towards my way about that. We have caregiver licenses in our jurisdiction, so maybe that's why I haven't heard of it.
Mm-hmm. Jamie, you're on mute, sir.
I'm sorry?
What organization does the village, is there, so there is the Michigan Township Association, there's the Michigan Municipal League. Is there a particular villages association?
No, we're MML members.
Right. And I would think that as an MML member, they're not being targeted because of their position. But
well, it's no use. Yeah, they can talk other places into it.
That's what I'm wondering, if I just haven't heard of it because of everybody knows already. Just don't bother.
Right.
But we know that the MML was on board back when we passed medical, and that they were going around the state the next day trying to get communities to pass moratoriums. So that's,
they flip-flop. But Harley, Kalkaska is not in a vacuum, so you deal with other municipalities or you hear things around you. If something like that were afoot in your neighboring communities, more than likely you would have heard about it by now. So I think that's fair to say, right?
Maybe they would have, but usually more the things that I hear are when they have questions regarding things that I've already done, not things that I wouldn't do. So I don't know if they would reach out to me about that.
That's an excellent point. Hey, Ryan, you've been here for a bit. GLEN, Great Lakes Expungement Network, is one of the wonderful things that's been created by, these clean slate initiatives that we've got from the government. You just celebrated 1 year of GLEN's existence. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's incredible. It's in marijuana years, so it's a year, but feels like we fit about 5 years of work in there and experiences. Like we get our money's worth, that's for sure. But we started off with 2 counties, and then we've expunged records in all 83 counties, and a lot of those, like Livingston and some of the tougher ones, we were the first ones to do it. And we'd hire great attorneys like Paul Talinda and Josh Covert and Bart Morris and Ashley, and there's a great group of them that have helped us this whole time. But we have to explain it to the prosecutor. They get it, and once they get it, it's been like a rubber stamp in it. But it's tough. We're the only fully free expungement group in the state. So if you go to the website Great Lakes Expungement Network.org, fill in the information page, and we'll let you know if we can expunge the record or not. So we've been Josie Scoggin, everybody knows Josie is the head of GLEN. She does it all and tries to let me take credit, but she's the one doing the work. And obviously Jamie, you do work, and Rick does work, and we get a lot of great volunteers. So, but we've expunged 500 records. It costs us really about $500 on expungement. So we've raised a lot of money, but we could use more help. The government could just wave a wand and make it happen like they should. But in the meantime, it's we got to keep doing the work because we can't rely on them to do it.
500 expungements in 365 days is more than 1 expungement per day. That's a hell of a pace, sir. That's an amazing feat.
The original expectation was like 50 or 60 in the first year. Just from discussing it. This also, should be mentioned, started off with a joint project between Josie's nonprofit Sons and Daughters United and Ryan's foundation, Redemption Foundation. And then there was just so much response and need for it that it became its own entity, its own charitable organization.
Yeah, and it's been, Josie, we've worked together on stuff, and nobody gets it done like her. And she kind of came, and we had some ideas, and she asked me what I wanted to do, and I said I want to expunge a lot of records, and Josie kind of took it from there. So, it's been incredible. She's got a rare skill set, and as everybody up here knows, like it's hard being an activist for over a decade. Look at Adam, and
look what it did to Adam.
No. That's Jamie. No. I mean, just to be able to withstand it, you going to prison, getting out, like it wears on you to stay involved. And you see a lot of people come in and they make it a year, or a nonprofit makes it a year, or maybe 2 years. And to be able to do it year after year, no matter what you're going through and your body's going through, and what the law's doing, and all the adversity. So, it's pretty incredible. So we got a great team, and it's just. Work we've kind of done before, but now we get to get funded for it. And, my idea was that it gets hard. So every dollar that goes to Great Lakes Expungement Network, it goes to expungement. The Redemption Foundation pays for any employee expenses or anything like that. So if these companies or people that donate to it, it's 100% to the nonprofit. So, that's kind of that's the gist of it. We need to raise a lot more money, which we are, but we could use just some. Hey, we're just trying to get all records expunged that want to be. We'd love if the state just decided to expunge them all automatically, and we can get working on something else. But that'd be nice.
Well, and as Josie always says, that there's this broad directive, as far as the obligation of participants in the industry to try to help repair the damage caused by the war on cannabis, the war on drugs, and by cleaning up people's criminal records. That's one of the most direct ways of affecting that change.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get jobs. I mean, look at all the jobs. There's not enough. There's a lot of skilled people that could be filling some of these good paying careers, and up for a marijuana offense. You know, I'm a new dad. Like, there's dads out there that can't coach t-ball and different, you know, organizations. Like, come on, man. Like, that would kill me now if I couldn't do that. So, you know, it's just stuff like that. I mean,
The daddy-daughter dance. That was one of the applicants. You couldn't do that until
if you can't come within a certain distance of a school because of your criminal past, then you can never attend any of those things.
Yeah, and just the background checks nowadays. So it's just, you know, it's like always, trying to get the elected officials besides Harley and a few, like, to catch up with the will of the people on everything in common sense. But hey, we'll see. It's election year. It's a winner for the left and the right. Nobody doesn't think marijuana expungement shouldn't happen. So let's do it.
One of the things I would also mention is that expungement seems to be a popular political thing. Yeah. They also allowed for the expungement of DUIs now. The state seems to be moving in a direction that it never was. Listen, I'm a big believer in, if you didn't hurt anybody, your crime should really fall off, and it just shouldn't be there anymore. But you know, the state's not there yet. Hopefully.
And those alcohol, the DUI expungements, cool thing, we got to do work with the city of Lansing and Cooley Law, and Paul Talenda and Mary Chartier's office put it on and trained other attorneys free of charge on how to do them and all the knowledge. But it's cool because now we got people that couldn't get their marijuana crime expunged, now can get the DUI expunged, and now can get the marijuana crime expunged. So it's all working together.
Right. And for those people who may not be familiar with Michigan, watching on the Roku television network or listening through Alexa or Spotify, here in Michigan, the Clean Slate Initiative did make a lot of different crimes expungible, which means removing it from your criminal records. However, with cannabis crimes, they were not as generous in their privileges to us. So in some instances where those DUIs or alcohol-related crimes can be automatically expunged or expunged by simply submitting a form, with cannabis, they allowed it to remain a much more formal process, which requires the use of an attorney instead of automatically taking care of it as they did with some others. So when we talk about the work that we still have yet to do, Ryan's right. I mean, we could change the law and just automatically do this, and then we'd move on to another charitable thing and fix that. But so, until then,
we have Marlena with us, who is the media director for GLEN, and also attended a couple of celebrations that we had.
Yeah.
To recognize the 1 year, and we were joined by some of the attorneys who have helped us, some of the people on the board, some of the people that have contributed to us, some of the people that have had their records expunged. Sometimes people cover all those things. And did one in Detroit, a Copper House, which is like a bud and breakfast, kind of a cannabis-based gathering spot. It was very cool. And then, of course, we did the other one up at the Kalkushka Lounge. And that was extremely cool. So I wanted to give Marlena a chance to come on as our media person, and one of the few people, along with Josie and Brenda and myself, that attended both of those celebrations.
It was so cool. I have never been to a place like that, either of them. They were so beautiful. Yeah, sorry, my thing was like going in and out. I think I might have bad connection, so I apologize.
Can hear you at least.
No, but Copper House and Kalkushka Lounge are both very new in the state of Michigan. We've had them, of course, in different versions throughout the years, since 2008's medical marijuana law and before then. But now to have a licensed and registered state legal entity does look different. Those chairs are made out of rebar, by the way. It's so artistic and it's so cool.
They were so comfy. I wanted to steal one.
Yeah, no.
I wanted to give a shout out real quick to Tree Town Gummies and Scout Cannabis too. Both have great products right now, just hitting the market. And part of the proceeds of each sale is going to the GLEN. So I would be remiss if we didn't talk about that. And
Yeah, and they put
up with that, and
they put the logo on those packages so you can see which ones are going to help out GLEN.
So when you're shopping, look for the GLEN logo and then buy the shit out of whatever you find.
Yes,
right.
exactly.
Good.
It's all good.
Yes.
I imagine with those two brands, it's probably in quite a few different stores too. So that's yet another way to help. Of course, Ryan, the Redemption Foundation supports not just the Great Lakes Expungement Network, but the Michigan Cannabis Freedom Coalition and other charities as well. Great Lakes Expungement, though, 500, Marlena, 500 expungements in 1 year? What?
That's insane. I know. It's amazing.
Crazy. That's a hell of a lot of good deeds.
Yeah, hoping to, just keep increasing it, just get more of those done.
What's the plan for more of these personal appearances like you did at Cooley Law or that you've done it at other places, including distribution centers?
It's when we do expungements, for some people that want us to come, it's good to explain, hey, it costs money. So we could do a huge PR push and tell everyone to come to Detroit and we're going to expunge. But if we get 50 people, it's costing us $25,000. So part of it is working with these provisioning centers or businesses that want to put up some money up front, and we know we're going to be able to expunge all those that we get, so we don't get overwhelmed. We have done that to ourselves. So that's happening. I guess it's not official yet, but we've got some of these events that are going to be taking place this summer, and I think a decent amount of proceeds might go to, there's going to be one, each one to go to the Redemption Foundation, which will go in turn go to GLEN. But we work with we've been working with cities. We're getting ready to work with Bend Harbor, work with Jackson, the city of Lansing. We're going to do some more with, and kind of just as more of those cities reach out and want to work with us, just working with them and understanding what they have and finding out their budget, and maybe with some of all this crazy relief fund money we got, we could use some of that. It's just a fraction of it. So so there's a lot of work, but it's all funding, and the network keeps building. People like Marlena are picking up the torch and pushing it, but just going as fast as we can, basically.
And you said 500. That's really on the low end. I just want to point out it sometimes gets up to like $1,200-$1,300 for somebody, depending on how complicated their case is and where it is and stuff like that. So here's Tyler's asking, it's 500 on the low end and up to like 1,300, and sometimes even those 1,300s require another 500 or 1,000 a little bit later on after some time passes, and they can work on other things on the record too, depending on their situation.
And we're getting it cheap. We've got great attorneys doing it.
Yeah, and our attorneys are different. Yeah.
When you talked about, Josh Covert and Barton Morris, and of course Paul Talenda and Mary Chardier's name was mentioned too. So when you talk about that kind of a company, those are top end attorneys, not just in the cannabis industry, but in any legal issue that you need in the state. So I think it's wonderful. First of all, GLEN is just great. Josie's great. Sons and Daughters United and GLEN, sort of like sister organizations, right? Marlena?
I would think so. I think that they go, really hand in hand. And I feel like Josie is such a good person for both of them. She's passionate and everything like that, and also so knowledgeable. I mean, from personal experience, she's able to kind of relate to things for sons and daughters and things like that. So yeah, I would say it's very, close together.
Well, and I know as a working GLEN that sometimes you get to hear people's personal stories of how having a criminal record has held them back in life, and how they've had to settle for jobs off the record, or in some cases, less than they're qualified for, simply because they've had this ridiculous additional weight on their shoulders after they've already served their penalty in their time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
No question. So the whole thing, it became a lot bigger, a lot faster than anticipated, and the need is still huge out there. And there are a lot of groups trying to do some good work, and oftentimes we'll combine with them and try to alleviate some costs. So, for example, if there's some budget, and sometimes city and county, Washtenaw County and the city of Ypsilanti are being very proactive about stuff like this, and there's some other places that are too. And sometimes we can join forces and get like the cost of fingerprints taken off, because they'll handle that, or just really anything, anything that helps out. And but we are unique.
Ryan, have you noticed, Ryan, like, has your mission begun to kind of evolve or expand now that you've kind of got your foothold in the expungement arena? Has new issues popped up that you're trying to work on, or are you just trying to get good at this?
Well, we do this, and then the Redemption Foundation, its mission is to right the wrongs of cannabis, prohibition from the past, the present, and the future. So we work with Rick works with me on that, and Jamie and many others, and we work with the Michigan Cannabis Freedom Coalition. So we help try to get guys and girls out of jail that are still in.
Michael Thompson.
Michael Thompson was the first, and a lot of people helped with that. But we've had successes since then. It's heavy lifting. We're not getting a lot of, cooperation from the governor's office. So there's still 1,100 people in jail in Michigan for marijuana crimes, and it's ridiculous. So we do that. Like, that's a big focus. We've been putting money on people's books. We've helped families that are hurting with people in jail that needed some help, and then just we fought operating under the influence crimes. Josh Covert's won every single one, but you get this 20-year-old kid who admits to a cop that he smoked weed that morning or yesterday, and next thing you know, he's getting charged in Saginaw County for operating under the influence, looking at something 10 years on his record. So we fight those still. Everyone remembers having to do that under Bill Schuette every other week. It's the same stuff. So there's a lot. So but we also have been able to help, give some grants, and we work with Force Detroit quite a bit as far as with the reentry programs too. So a great thing is to try to help other organizations that might need any assistance, and work with them, that if they're already doing the work, like as many people that want to help, the more, like, that's the idea. It's the only way it gets done.
Many gardeners, one garden. Exactly. Right. I mean, we're all working towards the same thing. We all want to make things better. So, yep. I know that Denavia Mosier, Black and Brown Cannabis Guild, also has held some expungement fairs here in Flint. Some other organizations have as well. The fact that there are so many people doing it just speaks to the incredibly huge need that there is in Michigan society because of the real decades of over-criminalization of our community.
Yep.
And certainly cannabis is the most obvious of that, but its presence in other fields too. Jamie?
Yeah. So oftentimes those things are like mainly screenings and maybe some of the preliminary stuff done. We're like there's other stuff that have to happen, especially when it comes to cannabis type stuff. Mm-hmm. So sure. Again, as Ryan said, one of the few groups that carries
take you all the way to the end.
Right. Yeah. So Redemption Foundation has sort of partnered with Anton to launch a new podcast. Anton, do you want to talk about your new podcast, sir?
Oh, yes. And I appreciate Ryan's support, and Nate Darling of Redemption. Nate reached out to me about 3 months ago, maybe, come up with an idea of a veteran cannabis themed podcast in a way to basically inform the community, because we want to inform veterans on different issues that they may not have insight on. We want to bring our industry folks into the loop and kind of inform them on what veterans are going through. So we formed this podcast, FOB 1620, 1620 being the military time for 420, and FOB standing for a forward operating base, which is kind of military lingo for a place that we all kind of gather and operate out of. And myself, Jevin from Lake Effect, and Neil from Bloom City Sturgis have gotten together, and we had our first show on the 23rd, and I thought it was very successful. Director Brisboe from the CRA joined us and spoke to the veteran PTSD research grants. Tomorrow, actually, the applications are due. We wanted to kind of get his insight and kind of get the community more info in how how this process is going. It's big bucks. I mean, 20 million last year and 20 million this year. We have a lot of competition going on this year, and I think that it's cool because big league academics are trying to get involved. Ivy League schools trying to get in on this type of research, and it's never been seen before. So hopefully the show, I want to make it a space where we get all different views, politicians, industry folks, celebrities, the whole gamut of people who just kind of support the veteran movement. And the first show I thought went great. I thought it was real cool. I thought it was great of Director Brisboe to come on, give us some of his insight, and only good things going forward. And it's kind of, I've been inspired by Ryan. When we talk expungements, it really influenced me to kind of figure out how can I help the veteran community. I've kind of come up with this idea of discharge upgrades because we have these veterans who are getting tossed out on their ass in the military, and similar to a felony, they can't get a job, they can't get VA home loans, they can't do a lot of things, and we want to kind of right those wrongs because cannabis should never be a reason that somebody shouldn't have access to their military benefits. So good things ahead, and I appreciate the support. 2 years ago, I would have never in a million years seen this coming and thought I'd be in this place. And thanks to folks like Ryan and everybody else that's present today, we're getting that voice. And I think we're kind of starting to change the tides here.
I think one of the important.
Say again when it broadcasts, Anton.
We're doing, it's going to be twice a month, Mondays at noon. We had our first show on the 23rd. So this coming Monday will be our second show, and it'll be every second Monday at noon.
High noon.
High noon, baby.
It should be on iTunes and on Spotify yet too.
Yeah, it's on Spotify now. I don't know if Nate got it on iTunes yet, but yeah, we're going to try and get it onto as many platforms. Yeah, absolutely. And again, Ryan, I mean, publicly, personally, I really appreciate assistance. It's been overwhelming.
Well, thank you. You're welcome, and thank you. And it's something important to a lot of us. And yeah, it's time. So thank you for you guys, all three of you, for stepping up.
Yep, it's a good Memorial Day thing to be reminded of. Thank you for your service, Anton. You know what we really need, though? I think we need a podcast for the Great Lakes Expungement Network. What I'd really like to hear are some people who are having their record expunged talk about the difficulties they've experienced throughout life. When you hear some people tell their personal stories of how that's held them back, I think that helps motivate other people to be more willing to get that expungement. If they have a shared experience and they know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, I think a podcast might be the right way to express that, Marlena, that's going to be your department.
Right? I'm like, okay, sounds great. I would love that. I think it would also be cool, show people too that, yes, it can be a lengthy process, but it doesn't have to be a crazy difficult, you're not alone kind of thing. So yeah, that's a great idea. I like that.
I'm full of those things. Oh, so even the train agrees. I have to say though, Ryan, we're looking at a lot of different. We're looking at a lot of. I guess it was Ryan. We were looking at a lot of different extensions of the Redemption Foundation, but really, I mean, you're the man. You're the guy that raises the money. You're the guy that holds the things. We had an auction one time. Jerry Millen gave boxing gloves to be auctioned off. We had this huge, gigantic auction, and everybody came because of the strength of your character and what you stood for. So, you make things happen for the charities that you choose to endorse, Ryan. And, as one of the people that's benefited from that, I appreciate it. Maybe nobody says it, but you're a good guy,
Well, thanks, Rick, and thanks for all your, that auction was sweet. We raised about 3 times as much with Rick doing it than if I was doing it. So, it's cool to finally be in a position where I'm not worried about, we're not worried about going to jail and having all our stuff taken, that we can build something and work with each other and just not have it completely torn down every time. So I just feel like we're getting momentum, and as a person, I'm learning. I have to learn. I've never had employees before. I've never delegated, and I've just always done my thing, and I've had to learn to do that, and that's been great to be able to, like, when people you're working with are doing things incredibly and making things happen. When I'm at home, actually I'm about to leave here in a minute. I got to go babysit my new boy. I have a new schedule. I'm only working 43 hours a week. I used to work 80, with everyone. Now it's 43, and I babysit. So, it takes a lot of help from a lot of great people.
Right on.
Hey, Brian, just a
Yeah.
heads up. I was warned that when it's your kid, it's not babysitting.
Okay.
I disagree with that, but that's what I was told. That
Moms get upset when you call it that because
Yeah.
it's what they do all day long, and no one calls it babysitting.
Right.
So,
But
yeah.
you can't babysit your own kid, is what I've heard.
Okay.
I have
Well,
three.
Hey, Ryan, anything you want to make sure that you get in here before you have to split?
I think we covered it all. I mean, hit on 5, 16, 20, GLEN. I mean, really, the foundation. I mean, if you want to get your record expunged, go to Great Lakes Expungement Network.org and fill it out. And
You can also donate there too.
And you can donate. And if you're a licensee or a business out there that wants to get involved, we work with anybody. With GLEN, my theory with Great Lakes with expunging records is that we'll take money pretty much from anybody. I think people like, I think the MCMA personally should pay for everyone's expungements. That'd be great. So, the foundation's different, but from GLEN, we're just out here expunging records, and maybe the people that cause some of this are going to cause more can at least pay for it. So that's my final.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, we're on the threshold of June here, and Redemption Cannabis is going to have a huge June when it comes to vendor days and public appearances, including a resurgence of the Redemption Gauge connection. Man, can you talk about that before you duck out?
Sure. I think we're going to do about 20 vendor days this month, and I think, Rick, you're doing 10 of them or whatever it is, or 6 or 7. I don't know. So appreciate that. But I was doing consulting because I couldn't be on licenses when I ran into the guys from Gage, and actually they hired me to consult. And I had known Uncle Mark since 2010, as some of you have too, and Hermanez has been around forever. So I knew they were Detroit guys, and the other guy, Rami, was the only, he was their cousin from Canada, awesome dude. But so we just reconnected. They went public, and they really are starting to run more, I guess, just refined. They're getting all their stuff down and their procedures and processes along with us. So we're reconnecting. They gave me the $50,000 social equity grant that helped me create Redemption, and then Great Lakes Expungement Network and the foundation. So they really, in my mind, they have maybe the most successful social equity program and private one in the country, just based on what's been able to happen. So it just makes sense for us to work together. We're going to be, like I said, we're going to be doing 11 vendor days with Gage and Cookies this month, all of them, and they got about 8 or 9 more stores coming on, and at the end of the year. So I'm in mostly mom and pops, but I try to be in any store where they do the right thing, and that's always been my thing. I don't hold it against anyone if they go public or stuff like that. I know what they've done for me and who they are, and I also know the politics in Lansing and what they've stood for behind the scenes. So I'm excited about it.
Yep. Gage awarded Ryan the state's very first social equity grant, with which he crafted the Redemption Cannabis line. So that was a history in the making, or history made rather. And Redemption is huge in stores everywhere. You've got wonderful cultivators and a great product. So,
and it supports the foundation, which supports GLEN and all these other things.
Right. A percentage of every sale goes towards the Redemption Foundation. There are several products out there that are donating a percentage of sales towards Redemption. And I think that's just fantastic. Or Redemption or GLEN directly. So I think it's just great that you've orchestrated that.
Yeah.
We have some monthly contributors for GLEN that we appreciate very much.
Yeah, and it's great. So anyone that wants a social equity plan, hey, get a hold of us, and we'll make it happen, and it'll work. And I just tell the stores too, every time they sell one of my products, they're part of their social equity plan. So Sales have been great. I do think we should have our best month ever in June. We just had our best week ever, and the team over here is working really hard. I don't take days off. I tell people I'll be selling weed every day of the week, every day for the next 2 years, even if I go somewhere. There's no let up. Made it this far, and it's all out all the time. Just the way it is. So it's Michigan marijuana, got to be, and just real thankful, and feel like we're in a good position, and ready to keep doing some work, survive the next 2 years.
Yeah, it'll come fast. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everybody. Appreciate
Peace, brother. Have a good one.
Take care, Ryan. Of
Nice
course,
to see
Ryan.
His whole plan. Go ahead, Ryan. Or sorry, go ahead, Rick.
Ryan qualified for that social equity grant because he ended up doing 2.5 years in federal prison for state legal cannabis activity here in Michigan, right around Lansing, in the middle of our medical marijuana era from about 2014 to about middle of 2017, I believe. So that's the reason Ryan qualified, because he actually did time in the slam, just like Mr. Hashbash has, for cannabis.
And that's the basis of Redemption. And it's really nice to see like a success story that's based around ultimately helping people.
Yep. And that's really what social equity grants are about, taking people that have experienced the drug war in a really brutal, personal way, and giving them an opportunity to walk into a world that they probably otherwise would be denied. And Marlena, that's really what expungements do too, right? They allow people to walk into a world that otherwise they have been denied up to that point, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just like not being able to like go to your kids' schools and like volunteer for events like that, getting promotions, like all that stuff. It's good to be able to help fix that a little bit.
And Marlena, just for a record,
Ryan did, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Anton.
No, I was going to say what I like about Ryan's, the way he did it is he created something sustainable, which I don't think we see very often in the social equity world, is that, just because we're going to give someone a discounted license doesn't mean they're going to be able to sustain themselves and become a profitable, equitable business. And he really took it to a whole nother level, and he really created all these offshoots that not only did he, as a social equity recipient, become successful, he's giving back and he's making others successful now, which is really, I think that should be, that it is the whole point of social equity all along. So he was the example of what it could be, and I really, it's a cool thing to see.
Ryan will be the first one to tell you he had a very important business coach that helped him guide along the way in order to help craft this business. Plus, he had a great deal of intimacy in the industry itself prior to launching. And I think oftentimes people think they know the cannabis game, but if you came up in the 20s or in the 20 teens, it's different. It's not the same. It's not what we grew up with. So the fact is, he started from the position of strength and built from that. And I certainly hope other social equity applicants have an opportunity to do the same. One of the things we talk about is access to capital. The other thing is access to intelligence, getting the business coaches, getting people to volunteer to work with social equity applicants for free or at a low cost in order to help them get the knowledge they need in order to be successful as a business person. You can have it within your soul to be successful, but if you don't have business skills, if you can't balance a checkbook, you're going to have a hard time with a small business in the state of Michigan trying to deal with taxes and all of the other costs that come along with that, unless you have a team around you. So I'm hopeful that social equity will involve more than just granting a privilege, that it'll come with some kind of financing and a team. So. And my Susan says, thank you, Marlena, because she knows how awesome you are.
Oh, thank you.
So, Marlena, you are, just for record, though, you're working at Allswell, which is a retailer in Grand Rapids area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
So in the industry, and deal with, have your own connection to people who need this kind of help, and your own motivation to want to help out in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when I was like bud tending like every single day, like I was always trying to like push redemption, just because I mean, the 10% going back to help people who are, incarcerated, formerly incarcerated. Like I really resonated with that even before I was working with GLEN. So yeah, Ryan is doing an amazing job. This is actually the first time I ever got to meet him, and I was like so excited.
Nice. Well, the persecution that he got from the federal district prosecutor at the time was designed around, in his mind, his name was Patrick Miles Jr. Even though it wasn't policy, it was designed around trying to set the stage for him to have a better chance of becoming elected as the attorney general. But one of the big reasons he was not was precisely because he did that to Ryan.
Right.
And we made sure that people knew about it.
Ryan's case was so well known in media during that time. He was completely, all of the individual caregivers involved were state legal. So at that point, the state was unable to press charges, even after they'd done this huge raid involving helicopters and National Guard support and all the rest of this stuff. So they were unable to get any kind of a case against him on a state level. So they kicked it to the feds, and then it just blew up, and it was a national story. And then when they decided to
6.
Yep, and when they decided to name Ryan as the ringleader to get the harshest penalty, there was a big outcry from the industry. But the feds care not about the outcry of the people, because their rules are different from our rules here in the state, and there was no mention of state legal anything allowed in that federal court, and he had to take the plea.
He was very smart about it. He did a lot of research. He knew what he was up against, and he took the path of least resistance.
Yep. Which
saw himself through,
which was wise for him, because he did the minimum amount of time. But while he was there, he worked on himself, self-improvement, studied, learned from people who were inside also, because there's a lot of smart people in jail. They just make bad decisions and then get busted for it. And the smarter you are, sometimes the bigger the crime you try, because you think you can get away with a bigger deal. So fact is, when he came out, he was primed for success and just kept chugging, just kept going. It was wonderful to watch. We hope the same thing,
Well, and with major dramatic setback, some of the people that we worked with early on just completely, screwed over a good situation that Ryan and others had been building, and then he had to go off and start again, and that's kind of when the seed money from Gage really kicked in for him and his new vision,
right,
of the licensing thing. So, but Marlena, is there anything else you need to make sure that we know? I mean, I really wanted you to be here because you participate. Well, you're the media person, and you participate in operations, and it is really cool. I mean, just to say it again, that there's been 1 year of operations, and that organization just blew up beyond expectations, and here we are.
Yes, and kind of like what Ryan was talking about, like if there's any organizations that want to, work with us and help us, continue to do all this stuff, please reach out. You can donate on Facebook, Instagram, on the website. Just, like we said, expungements are expensive. So just want to be able to get as many done as we can.
Right on. Very cool. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I have to go. My lunch is almost over. Thank you so much again for having me on.
Very much appreciate it. Thanks for making the time and using your lunch to help us out here. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.
See ya.
Take care. Have a good one.
Go ahead, Jamie.
No, it's all right, Rick. Go ahead.
One thing we didn't mention about Great Lakes Expungement Network is that it's possible for us to only expunge state criminal records. It's not possible for GLEN to expunge federal crimes, especially those concerning cannabis. So,
now, what you described is why like Danny Trevino's in federal prison right now too. The state couldn't nail him down, so they turned it over to the feds.
Yep.
That's happened way too much, and on the Western District, they were more likely to go along with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No.
But just like. It's very important to correct these wrongs and to like discuss the culture and bring people up to date about cannabis in general, like we've discussed, and that kind of stuff. But the historical perspective is really important too, and that's one of the reasons why the John St. Clair Foundation exists, and the concept of preserving his legacy and keeping that whole story intact, and the ability for that still to be able to raise funds, for that reason is really important. And soon to come up at the lounge, let me see, there will be, thanks to Russ, here's us at the first night, the ability to make some money off of the food service in there, and have some of those proceeds go to the John Sinclair Foundation. That could include branding of some coffee and the cafe itself and some other stuff like that. So,
yep.
Looking forward to that. How do you feel about that, Harley? You familiar with John Sinclair?
I'm just getting to know. I'm just getting familiar.
Right.
Well, he and ex-wife, really, I think, Lenny were integral 50 plus years ago in kicking off what has been the movement here in Michigan. And to understand a lot of that, and there's a lot of interesting, important shit that goes along with that. Adam's a particularly excellent historian on a lot of those things. And it's just, and while it's very, very important to help people directly who have been compromised, harsh consequences, Adam on our panel every week is one of these people. We don't reflect on it that often, but he's been put behind bars for this stuff and had to go through a lot of stuff, for it. So just the historical perspective that John kind of represents, is really important in the mix of all this. This is another reason why some of the big money interests make bad decisions. They don't know how we got here.
Right. And if we don't celebrate our heroes, no one will. But yeah, is there a John Sinclair health update?
Well, I've spoken to him, I guess, a few days ago, and he mentioned himself, and he sounded a lot better, and he mentioned himself that he was doing a lot better. Saw him a couple weeks ago, and he was hanging outside on his porch getting some sun. So that's better than being, in the hospital in a rehab scenario or all the stuff he had just gone through. So, so yeah, doing better for right now, and hope that continues.
Right. Yeah. John holds a special place, not just in Michigan cannabis history, but in American cannabis history too. The outrage that people all across the United States felt when John Sinclair was put in jail, given 10 years prison sentence for the possession of 2 joints.
Yeah, passing 2 joints to an undercover cop.
Yep.
10 years.
We understood at that point. Everybody else understood what we had already known, or what those people had already known. I was too young at that point to know anything, but at that, that really woke the nation up to the inequities that existed there, and also, drove a lot of people towards a life of activism that led to some really wonderful things. Adam, go ahead. I know you want to get on.
Yeah. So what you have to know is that John was not sentenced to anything out of the ordinary. John was given the normal sentence for that crime at the time.
Right.
And he was one of many people given, a 10-year sentence for the possession of marijuana back then. What John did was John was able to prove in court that marijuana was not a narcotic, and therefore it couldn't be treated as a narcotic, and that sentence of 10 years was cruel and unusual punishment. And what made John famous is that during that argument, he was not given an appeal bond, and they kept him in jail, in prison, whereas most people would have been given an appeal bond and allowed to not go to prison until their case was finalized.
He was kind of being targeted, though, right? Because he was such a troublemaker, as he calls himself.
Correct. Yeah. And none of this had to do with John Sinclair, the individual. This had to do more with a culture that had started, that he was a part of forming, with the White Panther Party, with the Rainbow People's Party, with this new kind of up from the people mentality that was happening in the late 60s, mid to late 60s. And it was the government and the squares coming down on these people that then they knew if they could chop the head off of this organization, they could kind of quell what was going on in this community. And it was an art community, and it was the hippies, and John was one of the leaders, and basically they were trying to take him down to get at this group, and it backfired mercifully.
Well, so John really cemented his position in the nation's cannabis history with that, and of course the rally at Chrysler Arena in order to draw attention to his case to help get him freed. But then, later, after years of living a completely different life of music and blues down in New Orleans, Mr. Hashbash went down there and grabbed him like a gator out of the swamp and dragged him up to Michigan and said, now you got to come back here and let's do this cannabis thing for a while.
You roll at the Hashbash.
That's right. And he's been, again, just a figurehead of a lot of the advancements, a lot of the discussions that we've had here since he's returned back to the cannabis world.
So it looks like Harley dropped off. I don't think that was intentional. I'm hoping that he comes back on. There's a couple more things that I wanted to discuss about up there. But in the meantime, I will say that, I'll just add, because depending on if he comes back on or not, the second night we had a couple of the people that we've had great conversations with on the show in the past about harm reduction. Becca Newman and Pamela Lynch of Harm Reduction Michigan, and Becca from Meds for the People. And there is as a part of a larger harm reduction kind of effort that Pam and Harm Reduction Michigan put on. There is a Narcan machine right outside of the Kalkushka Lounge that's available for people. That's something that they're trying to do in more places, and just have that available for when people run into these issues. I mean, it's not uncommon, unfortunately, and there is something that can help out when people get into that predicament. So,
and that's clearly intended for heroin, meth. The tough drugs where people are overdosing, and Narcan's there to save their life. No one's ever used Narcan to stop someone from a cannabis experience. So certainly there for the harder drugs.
No, it's not from that. It's not from fentanyl laced cannabis either.
Oh Jesus, I
I
continue.
just saw another article about that too. I mean, and I knew it was going to be bullshit. So as soon as I got in there, there was no determination. It was all, and the police believe it to be, blah blah blah, that type of shit. So
yeah.
And according to the pharmacist, it doesn't even make sense because you can't smoke fentanyl. So just that whole concept, if it made sense, okay, I can see the scare. You might want to be concerned about PCP.
What's the point?
Marijuana. I mean,
what would be the point of doing it if you could put it on there?
And it doesn't combust. It doesn't combust. So it just falls out in the ash. Right.
Now I will. Okay. So now, why would you want to lace cannabis with fentanyl? So that the person touching the cannabis was overdosed by the fentanyl. Because if you shook it on like powder and it was coated, you just put enough on to kill whoever touches that bud.
If they're going to roll out of the joint.
Correct. Yeah. But that's not what these stories imply. These stories imply something we know that's happened in the past, similar, as I mentioned, with PCP or angel dust, where we know that you can put that in a joint and you can smoke it and it will affect you. So people have had that experience where somebody may have not told them what was in their joint. Now, obviously that's ethically wrong, but those things are reality. What is not reality is anything fentanyl related to cannabis. It's a scare tactic, which unfortunately has given fentanyl a bad name. Because as a pain patient, I'll tell you, fentanyl is one of the greatest drugs I've ever come across. And unfortunately, I can't get access to it because of what's happened in the streets now. So, I get what's going on, and I understand how dangerous it is. But to imply that something like weed, which you know what they're trying to do, right? Because who
Right.
smokes weed, right? Your children. And that's what that argument's about, is that fentanyl laced weed is going to get to the children.
Well, the whole concept of lacing cannabis and then selling it to somebody implies that you're receiving an extra amount of money for the lacing, right? You sell that shit up,
That
you're
was
like,
kind
man,
of my point. Like,
extra
what the fuck-
fire. This stuff is blah blah blah.
Adam's saying to totally sabotage it.
You can't. You can't. So there's no purpose to it. I mean,
now a leaf encrusted donut rolled up, that's going to cost you a lot of money. That's not a $5 joint. That's not a $20 joint if it was done right, and you'll know it. And you'll be like, damn, why is this thing $30? Oh, well, it's 2 grams of flour with, a log of hash up the middle and rolled in keef. Oh, well, of course it's $25.
So I mentioned. Oh, go ahead, Anton.
I was just going to say, it doesn't make sense from a business standpoint, too. Why would people selling cannabis want to kill the people that are coming back to buy the cannabis? It just doesn't make a sense from a business standpoint either.
Or fuck up the
Exactly.
cannabis, putting other shit on it.
Yeah, that's their concern, is damaging the cannabis right now. But the fact of the matter is, these myths are going to persist because people still view cannabis as the devil. They'd still view it as the Jazz Cabbage, as the devil's lettuce, right? So in anytime they find an opportunity to connect cannabis with something dangerous and bad, they're going to do it. What did they call K2 and Spice? Synthetic marijuana, because they knew K2 and Spice were really bad stuff. So you just tagged it as a synthetic cannabis, and it has no relation whatsoever to cannabis itself.
Or cannabis, for that matter.
I beg your pardon, sir?
Or cannabinoids, for that matter.
Right. So when you look at it, this is just an extension of what society does in order to try and continue to punish cannabis, long after it's been determined that it's both medicinal and adult proved. Obama smoked cannabis.
But see, the problem is we touched about it earlier, and now we can talk about fentanyl or PCP or heroin or any other drug, cocaine. If the people got together and they legalized those products, how can a legislator or chore tell us no? And they've done it in other countries, and it seems to have worked out just fine.
We had a big conversation today with Harley in regards to lawmakers on a municipal level not letting their morality affect the decision about what's best for government, especially when it's expressed by the people. I think in government right now on a federal level, we see that same argument play right out. The discussion about my morality doesn't allow me to vote yes on a bill that clearly my constituents support, because I am a fill-in-the-blank religious person, and I cannot condone this behavior. And again, I'll reinforce what I said before. A person like that, God bless you. I'm happy for you having such conviction that you're going to let it drive your beliefs. Retire from public service.
Right.
Go be yourself. Go be that guy. But don't be that guy if your responsibility is that you're supposed to reflect the views of the people that you are representing. So
I attended a networking luncheon sponsored by Michigan Cannabis Industry Association last week. And I had 3 notable things. It was kind of a cool time all the way around, but there were a few things that stood out. And it was based around having a Barton Morris, who we've mentioned earlier today, was a sponsor. So he spoke a little bit from his perspective, and Act Labs was there. Some other people were there, but there was a panel of lawmakers, which had Representative Coleman, Representative Robbie, and Representative Houck. This archive hash resin that they have is awesome, by the way. I had some of that not too long ago. Thanks for being on here. And Rep. Robbie said that he was going to push the deschedule bill till the end of the session. Again, it's not going to pass this session in reality. I mean, it's just there's not enough momentum for it or support for it right now. But when people really think about it, there is no defense for keeping cannabis on the state's controlled substances list as a Schedule 1 or 2 as pharmaceutical grade cannabis. They're both stupid there. And this bill would take those both off, just rip the Band-Aid off, and that's it. Now, there could be some companion legislation that's necessary for it, but since it's not actually going to get enough steam other than just being used for educational purposes, but with Rep. Robbie pushing it, that education then actually gets pushed places, and that's really cool.
It drives conversation.
Yeah, and again, when you think about this issue, there's only one conclusion. I mean, so the other thing was Representative Halk was there, and he's the head of Regulatory Reform Committee. And we had some interaction with him based around House Bill 5301 and the package of anti-caregiver bills, and that was his committee that they were sailed through. I was in a meeting with them, before it got to that point once, and a couple others on committee and who were pushing the bill, and it didn't go very well. And Kevin McKinney, the lobbyist who works with MICIA, told me they had an early discussion that didn't go very well either. But during this luncheon, and it's politics, so people say a lot of shit, but it was cool to hear him say that he made a mistake on his position with the little guy, the caregivers, before. And now he understands, and now he looks at it differently.
Motherfucker gavelled me down, and now he has a different perspective, right? I mean, God bless
you. He was in a room
Hauck.
where that was going to be a good thing to say. I mean,
God bless you, Rep. Hauck. If that's truly how you feel, I certainly appreciate the fact that you've come on over. But I think if you'd have just given us an equal amount of time that you gave government, public relations specialists, and business executives to talk about their reasons why they wanted the bill, if you just gave us equal time, you probably would have come to that conclusion in committee before you made the vote.
Yeah.
Did it sound genuine, Jamie, or was it? I mean, sometimes you look at these people.
Well, yeah, it did sound genuine, and I did appreciate it, but I don't necessarily lock it in as ironclad. It was a good thing to say for that crowd at that moment.
Well, sure. He said it in front of his peers too, which means to a certain point he's going to have to own his words, because Rep. Robbie and who was Rep. Coleman, you said?
Yeah, they engineered getting him to look at Rep. Coleman's bill too. He's got a bill, and I forgot exactly what it would do, but it would help people with take some of the red tape off of some of the processes. I mean, I really wish I could remember it right now. It was fair enough, but it wasn't really getting looked at, and they used that opportunity to kind of like throw that at him too, and he agreed to pull it up.
Well, in this legislative session in Michigan, we have a 2-year legislative session. 2021 and 2022 has been a single session. The Michigan Cannabis Caucus of the Michigan Legislature, right? That's just emerged in order to sort of fight some of these battles in Lansing that are important to be won. I mean, the people have to prevail.
And some of those members still voted against us and supported 5512, which demonstrates how easy it is to bullshit people, and we don't really understand this and how much education is still needed. A lot of those people did not have ill intent, but they still were on the wrong side of history in that one.
House Bill 5512 is a bill in Michigan that would propose to allow specialty courts like drug courts to disallow participants who are medical cannabis users, really turns judges into doctors. We also mentioned some other bills regarding caregiver laws, and that's a completely different set of package than what we're talking about here. So,
word out in the street that there's all kinds of bullshit that they're trying to push through the Senate as well. So it seems like we're just going to be fighting this battle on as many fronts as that. And as I say, bring it. I say bring it, because you know what? It's bullshit.
This is an election year. I have to be honest with you. It's really a poor idea to attack cannabis consumers in election year. Some polling on a national basis indicates that up to 50% of adults in states where cannabis is legal for adult use, up to 50% of adults use cannabis. So when we make a big public deal and a big public stink about how these particular people are not being very cannabis friendly, do they not think that's going to have a repercussion at the polls? I absolutely think it will. It has in the past.
What about cannabis fatigue here that is becoming a very real issue, I think, within both houses of the legislature, that we're burning these people out on cannabis this and cannabis that, instead of having a constructive conversation that may lead to consensus. Instead, they're trying to ram this bullshit through, and it's burning a lot of these legislators out that don't care about cannabis. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, and it's just harming the situation in all ways.
Well, the who's really burning it out is all the lobbyists that are hired by different groups. We know that there's the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, yay, and then the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association, fuck you. But there are other organizations, each of which have their own lobbyists. Now think about all of the individual corporations like Select and Green Peak that have their own individual lobbyists also working in Lansing. And when a bunch of them decide they want to get people to do it, they get bombarded by lobbyists coming in trying to push these particular ideas. So when we speak out, we may not always be an orderly group of individuals, but we're not the ones really making them have fatigue over the issue. I think it's those folks who get paid to go there and knock on those representatives and senators' doors every single day that are causing them to be so tired of this subject matter. I'm still willing to kick their ass when they do bad stuff, and it seems as if with the potential Senate bills, bad stuff might be inbound. So
we're told to expect some shitty new anti-caregiver bills to be introduced in the Senate, and of course, and as McKinney also mentioned, I heard him the other night, and we've talked about it on this show many times. Our real super concern is like the lame duck scenario, when anything can happen.
So lame duck is that period of time after the election, but before the end of the legislative period, where people who don't have their office anymore can pretty much vote whatever the hell they want and not have to be accountable to the people for it, because they'll never face another election again.
Horse trading takes place, and
some of the worst bills, the impact the cannabis industry in Michigan have come during this free-for-all, no guilt trip, kind of a hedonism Jamaica style legislative period that we have. It's very dangerous for those of us who watch bills stop, and then all of a sudden get passed as part of a big group, because you can't control it at that point. In the lame duck session like that, there's no citizen input. There's just a bunch of votes in the Senate and the House over individual bills, and it's crazy.
Sad, actually. It's crazy and it's sad. Some of these people are just not good people, and they're not representative of the people, and it's a shame that we
and some are actually well intended but just don't understand things enough and take the wrong direction.
The problem is that's the game. That's how it works. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice if these people actually voted their conscience, some of them. We talked about that earlier, the people who have a conscience and can't seem to, get away from their moral compass that they have, whether it's right or wrong, and they can't do the right thing. Well, at the same time, there's almost like the complete opposite.
Yeah.
It amazes me what we've seen.
The amoral status of some of these politicians who just don't care about right or wrong. It's all about, Jamie mentions transactional politics. That's exactly it. I want you to push through my Build More Bridges bill, so I'm going to vote for your Kill the Caregivers bill because you're going to give me this vote later on that I need because it's crucial, right? That's the transactional nature of what happens in the legislature.
Yeah, and how is that right at all? That's the problem.
So like when they're trying to change the act, as we've mentioned here before too, they require a supermajority vote, and so our goal is to get enough no votes to stop that from happening, which in the House is around 27, 28, and it is possible to find 27, 28 lawmakers that will think this through. We would not be able to stop a simple majority vote, though, or probably even a 2/3 vote on some of these things, because we're up against a huge challenge, as was mentioned. PR companies, lobbying firms, people who are really connected being hired into the organization. I mean, it's very, very formidable.
And the threshold for change on this is 3/4. It's a supermajority vote, which is required in both the House and the Senate for any change to a voter-directed initiative, which is what the 2008 medical marijuana law was, which is where all the caregiver laws are, and that's what they proposed to change. So they need that 3/4 supermajority. And as Jamie mentioned, they could get 2/3. The difference between 2/3 and 3/4 might be 6 votes, right? Something like that in the Michigan Senate. Those 6 votes are going to be tough for them, but it's also more difficult for us to secure the margin we need in order to prevent that 3/4, because man, they have a lot of money to spread around, and they are very expert at spinning the tale to make us look like the villains, right? Jamie, isn't that what they're doing? Spinning this around to make us look like villains?
Yeah, they do. Well, they do many things, and that's one of them. Yeah. They take what we do and use it directly against. You can see the whole pattern and all the, everything. That's why I don't like having these meetings sometimes, because we'll sit there and just give them a bunch of fuel that they're going to use later on to bullshit people and to gloss over our objections because we stated them. It's really frustrating. Go ahead, Adam.
Well, just a clear example of that is the naming of this package of bills, the Cannabis Safety Act.
Well, that's what we're primarily talking about, and the new effort in the Senate now to revive that approach from that angle.
And it makes, I guess it makes sense in an activist point of view, meaning that we saw this coming as soon as the MCMA formed and came after things and stated, well, we are the industry and here's what we're here to ask for. And the legislator went, oh, the industry's knocking at the door, so we're going to talk to the industry. And they got slammed when a bunch of people said, well, why are you talking to that group of people? We're the industry over here. We're a much bigger group than those small, large players.
Yeah.
And the legislator kind of woke up to that and realized that that's a little different. But if that's how they're going to behave and they're going to tell these lies from the get, nothing surprises me. I'm not surprised that they're playing this kind of dirty pool.
So the third thing that I haven't gotten to yet that came out of lunch, and I was able to speak with Director Brisboe. I didn't get a lot of new information per se, but I've been concerned about how the state's kept on with the investigation with Viridis. We talked about this on here before. That's a lab that is part of a huge scandal and a tremendous recall of product and a lot of court interactions, and there's the state on them and they are on the state, and there's all these things that still have to play out. But he didn't tell me, hey, I can't comment on that because of an ongoing investigation, which is actually all I was hoping to hear. He actually went over and said, there's a bunch of shit going on with that. And again, no major details that are revolutionary or anything like that, but it was, I felt confirmed as though that the investigation is ongoing and that all these complications are still there and they have to work their way through them, So,
So for those who may not be familiar with the background, Viridis is a testing laboratory in Michigan who was subject to what we believe to be at the time the largest cannabis recall in America over concerns about aspergillus and improperly tested samples. A court case later on reversed half of the recall and allowed that cannabis to then be sent back to the market. It does seem as if, according to investigative journalists, that some cannabis that tested positive for mold contaminants and possibly even something worse was returned back to the shelf to be sold to people, and they had no way of knowing, no way to look it up, no way to verify.
So in that case too, the concern isn't just, hey, somebody handled it, so now it's contaminated when they do another test on it, which we talked about last night. Cass joined Medical Mondays, and it was a pretty informative, discussion. And if somebody handles it, that's enough to get get a fail microbially. But the whole reason that the investigation on Viridis happened in the first place was a lot of suspicious turnaround of tests very quickly on one hand, and also after failing at another lab on the other hand, and then getting cleared for these things. So my point being that it could be more of a concern than there just being a post fail because it was handled than there is it was improperly handled by Viridis, which is the behavior that created the red flags for the state to investigate. And then it does have something more to it than that. And again, whether or not it hurts anybody is secondary to the fact that consumers buying this stuff should know what they're getting.
Anton and I are part of a group that speaks to the director on a monthly basis at Consumer Connection. And one of the things we've been pushing for repeatedly, month after month after month, is remediation labeling and greater transparency with consumers over the life cycle of their particular cannabis. We are told who grow it. We're told when it was harvested. We're told when it was tested, when it was packaged. All of that's on the label. But never anywhere does it say this stuff has never been zapped by radiation or exposed to ozone gases in order to kill microbes, which might be still laying on the leaf that you're smoking. So
I got a good vibe from that meeting too, Rick. I think that we're moving in the right direction on that. So hopefully we'll see positive outcome on that.
An interesting thing I learned last night from Cass. They said that it was remediation that killed the protein that Cass was allergic to in the weed.
Yeah, so if it's remediated, they can use it because the proteins that they're allergic to have been broken down by that process.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right, which I would think is a reason why you would want it labeled, so you
exactly
know
correct
the benefits of remediation.
Yep, absolutely. There's just no negative to keeping that information away from people, except, of course, it's perceived to be a negative market factor. If you remediate your cannabis, it's likely that it certainly is, and someone is not going to want to buy it. I know if I saw that remediation tag, I'm probably pushing it back across the counter and saying, let's try a different brand. So the fact is the companies that have a vested financial interest are pushing against it. Citizens and groups that represent consumers are pushing for it.
We will win.
We are nearing the end. I wish Harley would have come back on, but I really appreciate him being on with us and discussing that stuff. I mean, I want to highlight that conversation with how they are careful with who they hire to be in the police department that they're funding with cannabis money.
I think that's great.
Yeah, that's just a cool.
A lot of people don't understand that when you sign up to be a cop, they ask you to fill out a questionnaire, and you have to be honest, 100% honest. Because as soon as they find out you're not honest, you're no longer looking at ability to be hired. So these people who come into
that's what they go after.
Well, but these people that go into law enforcement talk about their youthfulness and their cannabis use and things like that. And, it's known that they used cannabis.
We used to have people that came into Third Coast that were cops.
Right. And that's not the issue. The issue is, how do you feel about it? What do you, have you figured out that our mindset has changed yet? I think that's awesome. Because that makes a big difference if you're hiring people with the right mindset.
Right.
Ordering a police dog that doesn't smell cannabis. I love it.
Yeah, that's a cool one too. I also want to thank Marlena and Ryan for coming on, of course.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Talking about all the great work and that Ryan does is awesome. Usually, also really like to celebrate Kalkushka and Botanical. A lot of the work that Russ has been doing too, and team.
The lounge is amazing. It's wonderful. If you're in that area, you owe it to yourself to stop by and just burn one in a real comfortable surrounding, and then walk down the street and stroke the trout. There's a big trout in the middle of a fountain. Stroke it.
Yep. Whoa. That sounds like a plan. Hey, anything else, Adam, to add before we wrap it up?
No, man, I'm interested in stroking the trout.
Right
Come
on.
up to Kalkaska, baby.
Hey, man, sooner we end the show, the sooner you can get started on that.
Jesus.
Anton, anything to add?
Good show, guys. As always, keep up the good fight.
Wow.
Right on. Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation today. Rick, want to wrap us up?
Hey, look at what we saw today, 500 expungements in 365 days. Damn, that's amazing. Wonderful, amazing people exist. They're your neighbors. They live all around you. You never know anybody's story. So just be nice to everyone. You never know who's a Josie Scoggin. You never know who's a Ryan Basore. You never know how nice the person is next to you until you stop and talk to them and get to know them. So just treat them as if they're super special without even knowing them anyway. That's my lesson for today.
Right on. All right, 6 o'clock. Thanks a lot, everybody. Jazz Cabbage Cafe.
Hasta la vista.